News Radio 610 WTVN. Byron Henry on the live line right now. Of course, Byron is a legal analyst, and this is a really big week for the Supreme Court, isn't it?
It sure is. 8 cases left to go, including the 3 big cases on abortion, immigration, and affirmative action, all out of the state of Texas.
Do you have a sense which of those 3 biggies is the biggest? I mean, my thought is, with this being an election year, that immigration, there's going to be a lot of people really paying attention to that.
I agree with you, Joel. The big case, I think, from a constitutional standpoint and a political standpoint, is the immigration decision, because it's got so much in there. It's the states versus the federal government. It's President Obama's immigration action, outgoing, circumventing Congress. It's the constitutional separation of powers. And as you said, immigration is a super hot button political issue this year.
Yeah, and when you play that out, then, you know, given that we're 8 in the Supreme Court, I mean, is it likely just to be a stalemate no matter which of these cases we're talking about?
Well, anytime you're shorthanded in the Supreme Court, I think you're looking at a less aggressive majority, certainly a more, they pull back a little bit, they write little narrower opinions. But I think if it was going to be 4-4 affirmance of the lower court based on a divided court, usually those kind of cases, they just release that routinely when they vote, and they don't wait until the end of the term. So waiting this late in the term tells me and a lot of other court watchers that there is going to be an opinion. In other words, there will be a winner and a loser in this case.
Okay. What about the affirmative action in college admissions? Do you expect the same there?
Yes, and it's actually a more interesting situation because there's only 7 justices on that case. Of course, Justice Scalia missing after having died in February, but also Justice Kagan is recused on the case because this case goes all the way back to her term as Solicitor General. So it probably is going to be even more narrow, less ambitious opinion in the affirmative action case. But I think since the court took this case twice, some justices up there have a real problem with the University of Texas and affirmative action using race in admissions at public universities. So you're likely to find at least a narrow win for the plaintiff and a loss for affirmative action in admissions.
Gotcha. Legal expert Byron Henry, our guest. So of the big 3, the third in that is the access to abortion. So all the justices in on that, and how do you expect that to go?
Well, it just seems to me that a lot of states have passed a lot of abortion restrictions over the last 10, 15 years. And I think the Supreme Court taking this case, they're probably going to draw a line in the sand. I think Texas is likely to lose at least some of its restrictions. And the problem here in Texas is that the justices are faced with a record where if forced to comply with all of the regulations, there would probably only be a half dozen, 6 abortion clinics that provide abortions left in the state. And unfortunately, Texas, the size of the state, it means that women seeking abortions would have to drive excessive distances and whatnot. And so the justices are concerned that these regulations basically cut off access to abortion. So I expect some of them to be trimmed back and some of them to be found unenforceable, though there are a lot of regulations in that House bill that is up at the Supreme Court. So they'll probably salvage most of the abortion regulations except for a few.
I gotcha. And before I let you roll, Byron, because we still have that seat vacant, is there any crack at all? I mean, is there any chance that they might try to seat somebody before the end of the year, or is that just firm, we're waiting until the next president comes?
I mean, it seems like there's no crack and it's firm. The only wild card here is if there's a complete cratering of the Trump campaign such that it is basically a Hillary Clinton victory is inevitable, and there could actually be coattails which would cost Republican Senate seats. If they see that writing on the wall, they might at that point re-engage and look at Chief Judge Garland a little more closely. But right now, there is no crack in the dam whatsoever.
I got you. Byron, excellent report, and I appreciate the time very much. That's legal analyst Byron Henry here on News Radio 610 WTVN.